Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I am your host, Chris Bello, and today I've got Jorge Quintero with me. And a quick bio on Jorge. Jorge is a sales engineer for a neuroscience development company that creates technology for animal research in deep brain stimulation surgery. And more recently, about 9 months ago, he actually started an Instagram page called Mindfully Conscious. And the purpose of this page is to give people the evidence as well as some factual information about how our bodies and our minds work to make it easier to apply success principles that are already out there. So that's really cool. I'm really excited to get into this topic because so many of us know about these success principles. A lot of people think it's like hocus pocus, but you're actually showing some of the science and the evidence behind how these things are true. So welcome to the show, Jorge. Great to have you.
Thanks, Chris. It's a real pleasure to be on this podcast. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to share this message with the audience because like I just mentioned, so many of us, we hear all these things and we're like, is it really, can we really achieve success? Are we really capable of more than we think we are? And you start wiring your brain a certain way the more you think, positively or negatively. What are some of the topics that you think we should talk about today for our audience? I know you were mentioning it on your Instagram story before we jumped on the call here, maybe like sales and marketing and strategies and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think some of the value that I can provide in this podcast is talking about behavior. How can we change our behavior to actually develop good habits? What are some of the principles that we can apply in visualization, and also how to become a better salesperson? As a sales engineer myself, there are principles that I've learned over the years, and also with the information that I've learned in neuroscience that have really changed my perspective on sales. And
Awesome.
anything also that you, Chris, or people that listen to your podcast would find especially meaningful or helpful, I'm also willing to discuss.
Perfect. So I guess let's see. Maybe we can get started. And how did you get into your current career path? Like, what was your background? And did you just fall into it or see an opportunity, or did you intentionally pursue where you are right now?
It's an interesting story because I started off with a definite direction. And as an undergraduate at Rice University, which is where I graduated from, I was very in love with my major. I was studying electrical engineering. And ever since I was in high school, I knew I wanted to become an electrical engineer. When I became an engineer and I got a job doing typical engineering things, which was to show up to an office, go to a 9 to 5, clock out, talk to the same team members every day, and just develop products that people use every single day, I found that really miserable for me because it was just not who I was. And it came to be very surprising for me because I loved my major. I loved studying electrical engineering, but when it came to actually living the reality of an electrical engineer, I found that it didn't match my personality, didn't match what I wanted to do with my life. So, with all the free time that I was given, after college, I started reading a lot of books, particularly on investing, because now that I had this, an income, I was living at home, I wanted to invest that money and just have it grow for me. And I found out about something called wholesaling real estate, which is an investment strategy in the real estate space that was particularly really interesting to me because it had a low barrier to entry, and it kind of gave me an out to my current situation. And I didn't know how it would come out. I knew at the end of the day I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to have my own business, and that's the dream that I've had since I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. So it was a really good opportunity for me to just try something out. And so I did. I tried wholesaling, and I figured that it would be simple for me to transition into the wholesaling space. But it turns out that I was very wrong because the skills that are required as an electrical engineer are very different from the skills that a real estate investor or a real estate agent has to use on a daily basis. So there was a huge adjustment period where I was trying to learn real estate, learn sales, learn marketing. I went to a lot of seminars and a lot of workshops trying to build my mindset, grow as an individual. And so that part of real estate always stuck with me, in terms of continuously wanting to improve, continuously surrounding myself with positive individuals and focusing on goals, focusing on habits, focusing on a plan. But the whole real estate wholesaling operation just didn't provide the results that I needed it to in the time period that I wanted it to. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on wholesaling. And I quit my job. I had about 6 months of income saved up, and I just started working full time on it. I was cold calling for hours. I was going door knocking with some friends. I did a lot of really crazy marketing techniques that people just don't want to do.
Bandit signs.
Bandit signs, exactly. So it was difficult, very, very difficult, very challenging, and I was still not getting a lot of success. And as my savings were dwindling, my kind of confidence was being shaken up until the point where I was literally broken down in a situation where I was broke. I didn't have a lot of results to kind of, account for my effort, and I was back at square one. And so I did some reflection and I said, you know what? I'm going to transition from this. I'm going to pick something that's going to give me the stability that I need to kind of rebuild, but also do something that I really enjoy. And that's when I started looking at sales engineering jobs in different areas of technology, of the tech industry. One position that I have now is now that I sell technologies that are used in deep brain stimulation surgery, like you said earlier. And this surgery was so transformational, not just for the patients that we provide the technology for, but also for myself, because this technology is aimed for patients that have movement disorders. So they tremble a lot. They can't control their actual muscles. They're rigid. They have problems speaking. It's a completely debilitating condition for these patients, and all it takes to kind of reverse these symptoms is just some shocks in the head. So the surgeon will create an incision in their skull. They'll drill into it, and then they'll stick an electrode or a wire down into the brain into a very particular point, and they'll just start shocking it with some electrical current, and these symptoms will go away. So when I saw this in the span of 4 hours, I was
Hmm,
just blown away, and I
that's
had to
amazing.
learn more. Yeah, I had to learn more about what was going on here. And the more I learned about the brain, the more I learned about what was going on in this deep brain stimulation surgery. All of the flashbacks from my workshops in real estate and the seminars that I attended started making sense. I started making the connection between the actual science of how our mind works and how that explains behavior and mindset. And that's essentially how my page Mindfully Conscious began, was just this urge to show people that there is evidence for a lot of the principles that are said over and over and over again, and we should believe them, because now we're discovering that people understand now what people have said for hundreds, if not thousands of years, about meditation, about mindset, about positivity, and about habits. So it's a really exciting time to be in the neuroscience space. And I'm very blessed to have gone through this journey to now provide this information to other people who I really truly believe will get a huge value from.
Yeah, and I know we spoke probably a few weeks ago now just to get to know each other before we booked this call together. And I totally forgot about your wholesaling endeavor. And I didn't realize, I don't know if you mentioned it when we spoke before, that you actually quit the job to go all in on wholesaling. I know we mentioned it in passing. And it's something that I used to say at the beginning of my podcast when I first started, because I did it. I was like, yeah, quit your job, go all in, burn the boats. Tony Robbins, all these people say it. And I was torn between that. Like, should I go all in and quit? Or otherwise, if I have one foot in, it won't be successful because I'm only dedicating 10 or 15% of my time to it. But now I usually tell people, like, hey, obviously you've got to be hungry. You've got to create that hunger, because the hard part is when you have a good job, you're not really motivated to do much. When you get home, usually you're like, oh, I'm tired. It's been a long day. But then when you quit and you go all in, you get hungry fast, but then you start to get a little more desperate when you burn through your cash, then you can't think
Mhm.
clearly. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you can't cover the basics and you're like, how am I going to pay next month's rent or for groceries or even your car payment or whatever, you can't think clearly enough to make the right decisions in your business. So I thought that was very interesting of what you shared your story for anyone listening thinking about just quitting cold turkey. It may make sense to kind of build that income up on the side and then maybe even reevaluate if that's where you're at now to see maybe I should pivot and find another career where you can start to learn and grow and build your base back up. So that's interesting to hear how you got to where you're at now. I had one question too about the deep brain stimulation surgery. Is this like a one-time thing where people who are experiencing debilitating effects and shaking and things like that, do they have this surgery frequently, or is it just something that's done once and then their symptoms are cured?
So there is no cure for Parkinson's disease, dystonia, and essential tremor, which are the three primary diseases that this surgery treats. It really just masks the symptoms. So if we were to take away this wire that stimulates that specific part of their brain involved with voluntary movement, their symptoms would come back. So it's
Okay.
really a dysfunction of the neurons that are firing in their brain. But this surgery is just done once, and then maybe one time or two times down the road, like 10 or 20 years later, to just make some readjustments or to
Wow.
actually replace the battery in the pacemaker that provides these shocks. But
So the
it's
shocks are constantly
definitely,
going off.
yeah, the shocks are firing at a particular frequency with the particular amplitude.
Wow.
And now they're creating technologies that are actually going to adjust over periods of time. Like they're going to become smarter. You know, everything's smart now.
That's cool.
Even medical
Technology is
devices are
crazy.
becoming smart. Yeah.
You could probably use an app on your phone and be like, "Okay, change the frequency to this."
Yeah, and there's technologies that work exactly like that.
Wow. And it's crazy because we don't even know what we don't know yet. Imagine how far we've come in 100 years. I can't even imagine. I mean, unless technology and medical advances really increase, we probably won't be here 500 years from now. But I can't imagine the types of technology that will be here. I mean, you hear the movies of like the Armageddon type scenario, like if the world ends in nuclear war, maybe we have to start all over, like the Book of Eli or whatever, and things will be crazy. But knock on wood, if everything goes well, we should be way more advanced technologically and medically, and I guess as a species, our knowledge, like the limitless pill. I can't even imagine if that were real, then we would all be so smart, but that would be the new norm, right? So I kind of like the thrill of the competition, you know? You can learn more, you can put in the time, you can study in like mindset. If you read Have you read Mindset by Carol Dweck?
I have.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like growth mindset versus fixed mindset. If you believe you have a growth mindset and you're constantly learning and you know you can grow, you can outwork and outlearn others who think that they have a fixed mindset like, "Oh, I'm not smart. I was born like this. I'll never be smart enough." So those things that we talk to ourselves about are extremely important. Do you want to touch on that a little bit from what you've seen in your kind of research and your posts that you've done on your social media page, like how important self-talk is for success?
Yes. So I want to go a little bit into detail about the growth mindset because
Yeah,
this is really where all personal development stems from. We all are given, a background and a family that we kind of grow up into, and we can tell ourselves negative things about where we come from, or we can tell ourselves positive things about where we come from. But ultimately, the growth mindset says that you can develop and turn into whoever you want to become, and the science supports this. So there's a major principle of neuroscience called neuroplasticity. And what this principle says is that the brain is capable of adapting not only in childhood, but all throughout your life. So when you're a child, you can be put into any culture, any society, and you will adapt naturally and you will grow up to become a functioning member of that society, assuming no injuries or no genetic disorders or anything like that. As an adult, though, that process is much more controlled by what you choose to do with your free time. But the science does say that whatever we choose to do, the brain will adapt to it. And this results in two different forms of neuroplasticity. One is called adaptive neuroplasticity, where you challenge yourself, you do things on a consistent basis that stretch your mind, they push you to new limits, and your brain adapts afterwards to these challenges and it physically changes you. As the connections in your brain change, so do you as an individual. And this is kind of how neuroplasticity works in that sense. Now, it is a double-edged sword. So if you spend a lot of time just not being in challenging situations, you're constantly comfortable, and you put in low effort for the needs that you have on a daily basis, your brain adapts for that also. So what happens in that situation, it's called maladaptive neuroplasticity. You actually lose brain cells that are not being used.
Wow.
So not only are you relishing in your comfort, but you're actually diminishing your mental capacity. That's going to always be reversed. Like as you exercise, as you learn new things, you boost the amount of neurons in your brain. So this can always be reversed, but it's not as influential in this way as it is in the way of the maladaptive sense. So once you've lost those neurons, typically they're gone forever. So we need to spend a lot of time really thinking about how we live our lives and how we want to spend our time developing ourselves. That's kind of why I've developed a lot of habits to really push myself constantly, because I understand if I'm not using those neurons for whatever skill I want to apply it to, then I'm going to lose them eventually. And this explains a lot of the neurodegeneration that people experience later on, where they can't walk, they can't remember, they can't think, they lose a lot of their abilities that they've had when they were younger. It's because of this process. It's not because of aging.
Wow. I always hear that it's great when, I guess, for dementia patients and things like that, to try to do puzzles and stuff like Sudoku and constantly be using their mind and thinking, because it can be easy to get caught up in the mundane tasks of just like, okay, do your chores, do your dishes, fold some clothes. You're not really thinking very much versus a puzzle or something where you're trying to like think through patterns or like a word maze, those types of activities. Is that kind of what you're talking about in terms of pushing yourself, or just anything in general, like reading or learning new things?
Yeah, so typically any situation that brings you discomfort and that requires you to think harder than usual about something is a good form of neuroplasticity. So
Okay.
if you're paying a lot of attention trying to understand a book, that's good for you. If you take a class in something that is completely unrelated to what you've learned before, that's good for you. Really, it's like muscles, right? We go to the gym, and if I only worked out my bicep, then only my bicep would be strong and everything else would be weak. And this is the same way with our brains. Our brains are capable of doing all sorts of different things. You can play instruments, you can read, you can visualize, you can draw, you can do crazy gymnastics. These are all controlled by our brain, and the more we work them out in different areas, the overall better health you will be in mentally.
That's a really good example with the bicep thing. And even for those who have gone to the gym and work out and understand this, the relationship between like working out and working out your mind, if you go to the gym and you only do the same workout every single time and you never switch it up, your bicep gets used to it after a while, where it's not getting stretched to the same capacity as if you do a certain workout for 3 weeks and then you switch. Maybe you do heavier weight, or you do different movements, or you switch from the dumbbells to doing like a preacher curl with the easy curl bar. If you're switching things up constantly and kind of tricking your muscles in your mind, I imagine that you're able to push yourself further than if you just do the same thing every single time.
Exactly. And the way you can kind of summarize all this is through comfort. How comfortable are you right now with your current lifestyle? If you are very comfortable, if you hardly experience stress or some form of challenge, then that means that you need to look for a new change to your routine that makes it slightly more challenging, so that you can grow or you can redevelop skills that you might have become rusty in.
That's a really good way of putting it. People don't like to be uncomfortable usually. We like comfort. We like things that are familiar. A lot of us don't like change. And it's easy once you graduate from school or you get that job and you're just showing up every day, going through the motions to get comfortable. And I think that's why you had quit your first job and that's why I quit mine, is because I knew I was getting comfortable and I knew that comfort is the enemy. What good is the enemy of great, right? If you're comfortable, you're not motivated to do more. And I found myself doing that, getting in the routine. I'd go to work, I'd come home, it had been a long day. I'd turn the TV on, I'd play some video games. I even signed up for a GameFly membership. This was after college. I was single, I had a good job, I had plenty of savings. I signed up for a GameFly membership where I could play a video game, mail it in, get another game. I was just playing video games like after work, and I was not challenging myself at all. And it wasn't until I quit and got uncomfortable and pushed myself into a new, like forced myself to learn new things, try wholesale and get into real estate, switching from never being in sales to now trying to talk to sellers and negotiate. I was very uncomfortable, and that's what really got me on this path of growth mindset. And it seems like we have pretty similar journeys, and from quitting the job to now, of course, you're studying more of the growth mindset and like the brain, the science behind it, and it ties in with your current career, which is really cool because you get to earn income while learning something that you're passionate about, and now you're starting to teach it to others. Because I looked through your page, you have a lot of good content on there, and it's no surprise that you're quickly growing a following on there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. And I do want to touch now on, okay, whenever we induce or we create changes in our environment, we're trying to adapt to them. But how do you actually go from adapting to becoming skillful or becoming successful? And this ties into the idea of failure. And I want to touch on this because many people, they are willing to take the risk. They're willing to try something new, but as soon as they experience failure, they give up. And
Yep.
this is really unfortunate because failure is a natural part of the learning process. And people say this all the time. Failure is only failure if you give up. But I see failure as mistakes, not getting the outcome you wanted, or falling short of where you want it to be. Failure is naturally hardwired into you to happen. And what I mean by this is every time we decide to do something new, your brain kind of makes this plan or this prediction of exactly how it's going to carry out that behavior or that action or that skill. And with limited information, especially in a new environment or in a new situation, it doesn't have much experience or much knowledge to draw from. And that's why we suck at something in the beginning. We just don't have the experience or the information that our brain requires to be skillful at something. And so we can go ahead and try something, but we're not going to be good at it. But this is expected. It's frowned upon by our society because it shows vulnerability. It shows that we're not naturally gifted at something. But if we have the growth mindset and we understand that failure is naturally hardwired in you for things that are just completely left field for you, then we can kind of see failure as a sign. Okay, my brain is telling me that, or my mind is telling me that I'm definitely not good at this. What were the what were the ways in which I failed at this, and how can I improve the next time? And getting that feedback, doing that reflection is extremely important for the learning process because the more we pay attention to something, the more information and details we can pick up that actually improve our learning and actually create an upward trajectory of mastering skills. So this is something that I want people to take away with them is that next time you experience failure, if you give up, you're basically putting yourself back in the same position of comfort that you were at before. But if you continue to push yourself and you reflect and you seek feedback either from a mentor or from other individuals who will be honest with you and you internalize those things, the next time I can guarantee you your brain will make a better prediction of the thing that you have to do or the performance or the sales pitch or the presentation that you have to give, and you will be better at it.
Yeah, they say fail fast, fail often, fail forward. Even from when we were children and you touched a hot stove or you didn't know that, I don't know, a pot was hot and you burn your hand, that in a way is making a mistake. It's failing to realize that that was going to hurt you. But of course, you needed that to know that now, if you feel some heat, like don't touch that thing, probably, right? And if you never knew what it felt like to get burned, you wouldn't know that, hey, that's your body's way of trying to protect you and saying, hey, I shouldn't hold my hand on the fire. So same thing with whether it be in sales or in your career. Like as we fail, we just continue to learn. And I mean, I guess as long as you don't fail and you do something that's potentially life threatening or life ending, you make some kind of terrible mistake and you fall off a cliff or something, try to mountain climb or free climb or whatever. I think that's the only way you could also lose is, okay, you did something and you lost your life. But as long as you're
Yeah,
making, that's a little extreme. So I was listening to an audiobook the other day and it was just mentioning like way back in the day, if you got in the wrong, you went in the wrong bush, or you thought that the movement in the bush was a bunny, but it was a lion, like, okay, you died. In today's day and age, we don't really necessarily face that kind of crazy scenario every single day. I mean, I don't know. You're in Houston as well, right?
I am.
So you're in the Houston area. Like I haven't seen a lion roaming around the streets. I mean, you may see like a bear or something in like, I don't know, Lake Tahoe, but out here you're not going to really get, hurt by the environment, maybe like cars and stuff. But
Yeah, the
um,
biggest threat we have is cockroaches.
oh yeah, that's enough to scare me into a heart attack sometimes.
Yeah,
The
same
big
here.
Texas ones, they like fly at you and you don't even realize it until you turn the light on.
Those are terrifying.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm just like, I need to call an exterminator. But I know you mentioned earlier that we can talk a little bit about the sales stuff and how to improve that for anyone in our audience, because I think that's really important. Whether you want to do sales or you don't, we really all in entrepreneurship need to sell ourselves, at least to make people believe in our message and our mission and maybe even our product or service. So can we talk a little bit about that, in terms of the mindset needed to be successful with sales?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I believe can draw a lot of attention to your product is through emotion. We see a lot of these articles online with these bold headlines, especially now with the coronavirus. This is a good example of how
Yeah.
people are, I think the UN declared it a global health emergency. Words like that are super bold, world emergency, draws a lot of attention. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can capitalize on this in the sense that they should be able to make bold promises and have a lot of confidence and emotion in the way that they present their products. Because ultimately, that emotion, you know, those words that are filled with meaning will draw attention to you, and people will start to notice your product. People will start to engage you. I think that's really important. The second thing that I think is extremely important for an entrepreneur to develop is empathy. This is a skill that I don't hear a lot about, especially um, people that go to real estate seminars. They don't really talk about empathy. But how else are you supposed to understand the needs of your client or your customer if you can't put yourself in their shoes? We're not talking about sympathy where you feel sorry for somebody. We're talking about empathy where you actually understand what they're going through. And so just taking 10 minutes out of your day to really understand, okay, what are the needs that my customer has? And not only understanding those needs, but feeling them in yourself. When you feel those needs in your own body, you gain a new sense of urgency to actually act on those needs. So now you're not only are you approaching it from an informational standpoint, you have the information of the need. Now you have an emotional motivation to solve it because you understand what it feels like. One of the examples that I can draw from in real estate, especially in the investing space, is that there are many individuals that are in distress situations that get pestered hundreds and hundreds of times a day by people that are marketing to them, people that are trying to buy their house. And really, those people are just concerned about trying to, sell their house to another investor or try to make a fee from the negotiation and the sales aspect. They're purely monetarily driven. Typically, these people will only sell to those that feel like they're listening to them and they're actually understanding them. And that can only come from empathy. So what are some ways that we can really, cultivate the sense of empathy in our lives? It's really just focusing on experience. It's focusing on taking the facial expressions of the people that you interact with, thinking about the small details that are not said to you or not subtle to you. It's asking that individual, hey, it seems like you're going through a really hard time. Is there any way I can help? Or what is going on? Tell me. Be open and receptive to people's needs, even if it draws drama into your life, even if it draws conflict. I can guarantee you that that's going to translate into better performance in your business.
That's so key, and I learned that too. I worked with a wholesaling company in Houston for about a year, and I learned a lot of their sales scripts, and it seems like it's almost forced sometimes, the empathy part, but they would really make it a point to say, like, honestly, put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you were about to lose your house in 2 months, how would you feel? And some people could do it better than others. The strict salespeople had a hard time of talking face to face with like the sweet old lady. It was one of the examples that we used of a potential person we talked to, and he had a hard time. He wanted to get to the point, like, hey, here's the number, here's the offer, like we can close in 2 weeks. And then one of the owners was very good at talking to the sweet old lady for 2 hours if that's what she needed, in order to feel comfortable and in order to vent about the situation. And he would talk about all kinds of things in her life, even if it seemed irrelevant to the actual home. And that's how he's able to help clients to get those feelings out, to really feel like he cared about them. And of course, he didn't try to just do it for show. He honestly wanted to help these people. And I think that makes the difference between great salespeople and then average salespeople, is whenever you can actually empathize and you truly believe that your product or your service provides the solution that that person needs. And then whenever you can match that, then I guess the sky's the limit in terms of the sales that you can produce.
Yeah, and I want to go on a little bit more about this because I think there's a key psychological aspect that people should understand. And there's a saying that says it's not what you said or you did, it's how you made the person feel.
Right.
So when you put yourself in that person's shoes, when you let them be vulnerable towards you, that is really difficult for somebody to do. Like for me to be vulnerable to a stranger that I've only talked to a handful of times, that's powerful. And there's actually chemicals in your brain that are released that increase the trust and the bond that you feel towards that person whenever you can be vulnerable. So not only are you know, creating better results in your business, you're creating better relationships. And who knows how many of these relationships will turn into referrals or repeat business, which is why empathy, I believe, is one of the biggest things that people can implement right now to blow up their business.
Do you have any tips on how someone who is not great at empathy could get better at it? Maybe just to slow down and to think. I know obviously you want to put yourself in their shoes, but I know some friends who are they're like a D on the disc profile. They're very demanding, direct. They want to get to the point and they have a real hard time empathizing with other people because they kind of want to just force the sale almost. So do you have any suggestions on how one can improve that empathy muscle?
Yeah, so it's a like you said, it's a muscle. So it requires deliberate practice. What I do every single morning is I'll meditate and I'll think about the ways in which I love others. There's always going to be people that are difficult in your life. There's people that you're going to feel nonchalantly towards and people that you feel favorably or passionately about. It's very easy for us to feel emotions or to put ourselves in situations or put ourselves in the shoes of another person, of people that we care about. But actively cultivating this sense of love and compassion for people that you feel nothing about normally, and people even that are difficult for you, wishing them success and happiness, wishing those that you don't really talk to on a consistent basis that you hope they're doing well, really sending good, grateful wishes towards their way is a good way to practice that muscle. Another way to think about it also is after your appointments and meetings, really hone in on the details, hone in on the body language, hone in on the facial expressions, hone in on the key words that someone says that might give you a closer look at to what situation they're actually in. So if someone is talking about, they're trying to sell their house and they want to move out within a month, put yourself in that situation. Think about what it's like in the past for you to move out in a month. It's a really stressful process. There's so many things that need to be packed up. There's so many things that need to be moved, so many loose ends that need to be tied up, so many documents that you have to fill out. Ask if there's a way that you can help in that situation. These are, it's really just about getting out of the present moment and getting into your head and really focusing on details and focusing on cultivating compassion for people that are difficult for you or people that you don't feel anything at all towards.
That's powerful. And even gratitude, morning, daily gratitude, affirmations. I've been doing all of that lately and just feeling more, like you said, think about all the love that you want to give to people that you don't even know. And as weird or woo woo as that sounds for people who've never done that before, it's so powerful because then you just feel more grateful and you see like every person that you meet, you're just grateful that they're another opportunity for you to have a new relationship, a new conversation, for you to have a positive impact on them or vice versa, and you see the world through a different lens completely.
Yeah, and I want to talk about gratitude also because, like you said, people think it's woo woo, but there's a lot of science now, a lot of studies that have been done that support gratitude as an overall well-being skill and technique for people to use on a daily basis. What I want to talk about also that can also support empathy is this idea of getting out of the stress mentality, getting out of that stress response that we feel on a daily basis. Especially in America, we're constantly running from one place to the next, thinking about the next task that we have to do, worrying about all the bills we got to pay and all the money we need to make. It shuts you off from other people. It makes you selfish. And there's a reason why they call it the survival instinct. The stress response is a survival instinct because it's only focused on you. It's only focused on what I need. So practicing gratitude is a great way to shut that stress response down in our bodies and to actually free up our mental energy to think about other things. So if you find it difficult to empathize with somebody or to think of possibilities for your own life, if you're trying to gain a new skill or you're trying to take a new opportunity that's making you fearful or doubtful of your own skills and capacity, practice gratitude, and not only saying the things that you're grateful for, but trying to really feel how grateful you are for those things. Because when we feel them, we essentially put our body into what is called the rest and digest state. And this is the state that most people are in when they're ready to go to bed after they've taken a warm shower or they've gone home from work after a long day. It's a day where really our minds just start wandering, and this allows us to really be put into a position where we can focus on the things that didn't go well or the things that are going well or the things that you want in the future, or just putting yourself in the shoes of another person. This gratitude practice allows us to actually set up our mindset and frame our mental energy so that we can actually grow these things.
Yeah, and what you said there that's so key is that you have to try your best to feel the gratitude. It's easy to just say, "I'm grateful, I'm thankful, this is awesome." If you don't feel
Yeah.
it, just saying it isn't gonna magically do anything. And so feeling it for me personally, that's been one of the harder things sometimes in the morning where I'm like actually trying to make sure that I feel these things. Like I am grateful. I have everything, like everything that I have in my house and the food in my fridge, like all those things that I take for granted. Other people are trying to survive today in another, third world country. Some people are starving, wondering how they're going to eat today. And I'm here wondering, like, oh man, I don't want to get inconvenienced or something, right? For something minor, like, man, the cat knocked this thing down, like, big deal. And so when you really feel grateful and you can put the feeling to it, it helps you, like you said, escape that stress, that place of stress that we always feel, especially in America. Of I'm the same way, right? Like I got something, I cross something off the list, I add two more. It's like the dragon thing or the serpent where you cut one head off and two more come. We just like to
Yeah.
keep ourselves busy, and that can continue to induce stress. Whereas if we just take a step back and we realize, hey, we're doing the best we can, we're making progress, and be grateful for what we have accomplished. I think that way we're able to come from that place of abundance and thrive instead of just be in that survival mode that so many people operate in day to day.
And these are skills just like any other skill. So they're going to
Yeah.
require practice. you'll try to feel gratitude the first couple of times that you do it, and you won't be able to feel anything. But just like we've talked about before with neuroplasticity, it just takes some time for you to understand and to learn how to do it properly. And you shouldn't be discouraged if you don't get the results that you want in the first couple of passes.
That's really important because even the same thing with meditation, one of my friends messaged me like, "Hey, so this is weird, but when you're meditating, like, do you just think of nothing or do you count sheep or what? Like, how do you do it?" And I was saying, "Hey, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm just sitting still, being quiet. Sometimes I listen to sounds of ocean waves." The fact is, I guess the most important thing is that you're actually trying and you're consistently working on improving these things. That's more important, I think, than trying to get it exactly right because there isn't really a necessarily right way to do it. You're just trying to improve and you're consistently focusing on staying consistent, I guess, and keeping up with it overall. That's more important in my opinion.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah, so let's see. We've got probably like 10 minutes or so left. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or dive through? I know we talked about some sales stuff, the neuroplasticity of our minds, growth mindset, gratitude. Those are all great topics. Are there any other topics that you share with your audience that you want to touch on here before we tell the audience where to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I want to talk lastly about habits, because
It's
habits
important.
are really what are going to determine your trajectory and your outcomes. A lot of
So,
people, go ahead.
how would you say we can form habits? How do you know what's a good habit?
Yeah, a good habit will be one that does not provide pleasure in the moment.
That's good.
It almost always provides rewards in the future. So an easy example that most people can identify with is working out. When you work out, it obviously does not feel good to stress your muscles and to, feel pain as you're working out. But I don't know a single person that has regretted it afterwards. Like, I don't know anybody that has gone to the gym and left and said, "You know what? I
I shouldn't
hated the
have done
fact that
that.
I shouldn't have done that." Maybe if you just like completely destroyed your legs on leg day, but you're still going to say it in a sarcastic way.
Yeah,
You're going to be thankful.
yeah. That's a good way of putting it. I love that. So I've heard it's extremely important if you delay gratification. And there's even that study, I forget which study it was, maybe the marshmallow study or something, where kids who were able to delay getting a marshmallow right away got two later. And then the studies tracked that people who were able to delay the gratification ended up being more successful in life because they weren't trying to get that immediate gratification. They were able to sacrifice in the short term, knowing that the long term would pay off down the
And
road.
I think part of that comes from just our of how we value things in life.
Yeah.
Everything that is meaningful always is difficult. And I think we valued it to be that way because they require pain and discomfort in a particular moment or particular moments, like if you're doing this for years. And whenever you achieve something that was very difficult, it just feels so satisfying. And a lot of people get kind of stuck in the comfort. They think that comfort is really the end goal. And from what I told you with neuroplasticity, we're starting to understand that that shouldn't be the end goal. The end goal should always be to challenge yourself as much as possible and to focus your habits on creating outcomes that are going to give you pleasure or happiness later.
And that can be so hard to do because I mean, even in college or high school or whatever, a lot of people go for that immediate gratification. They want to go to the party, they want to get drunk, they want to be influenced by drugs or alcohol or, one night stands and things like that. And I guess as you mature out of that, or maybe some people avoid it entirely, you start to learn that, hey, if I focus on things that are hard, that do take time, like studying a subject or passing a class or learning a new language or new skill, those things aren't fun at first because you're frustrated. I don't understand. Like if I were to start
Mhm.
trying to speak Portuguese or something tomorrow, I would look at the book of the basic books that, I hear a 2-year-old speaking, and I'll just be frustrated that I don't understand the basic words. Or here's another example. I don't know if you've ever gone skiing or snowboarding. Have you ever been?
I have not, but I hear it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but then whenever you're struggling and you keep falling on your butt, like my first time I went, I was probably 15 or something, and I have gone every few years, so I've probably been 3 times. But I'm falling on my butt on a snowboard or on skis on the Blue, which is the intermediate mountain, and then you see 3 or 4 year olds who have grown up doing this, and they're flying down the mountain without falling, and you're just like frustrated, what's the point? They're already doing better than me, like why should I even try? And so trying new things is going to be frustrating, but you know that over time you can get better. And I know, like you said, we still have that neuroplasticity. We can still do it at an older age. Maybe our minds aren't as malleable as when we were children, and it may mean that we have to work a little bit harder, but it still means that we can change and we can take control of our lives. We just have to be consistent and deliberate about it.
Exactly. And like I said earlier, the adaptive phase is always uncomfortable.
Yeah,
When you start a good habit, you almost always never want to continue with it because it leaves you with the sour taste in your mouth. It just feels like, why should I go through this pain when I can just sit on the couch and eat my potato chips and feel
especially if you don't
completely
see the
fine?
results overnight. If like when you work
Exactly.
out and you look in the mirror and you see nothing, and then the next day you look the same, but then 6 months down the road of consistency of eating right and working out, you're like, you may not even have noticed how much you've changed until you see photos and people tell you how amazing you look. And that's how it happens. It's a slow over time, the progress. But yeah, we talked about so many great things. Like, were there anything else that you wanted to cover in terms of the habits? I know we talked about how you
Yeah.
identify a good habit.
So we talked about how to identify a good habit. What is the right amount of effort that you should put in every day to create a good habit? Because a lot of
These are
people
good questions.
they want transformational progress. Like they want from one week to the next to become the person that they're trying to become.
Guilty.
But really, yeah, but really, that's not going to happen. So we really just have to enjoy the process. There's this thought experiment that goes like, if you were to fly from DC to LA, like on a plane, and that plane, took its normal trajectory and landed in LA, I don't know, 6 hours later, if that plane were to be off by 1 degree from the from its initial trajectory, like if you just did a small change and it just kept that 1 degree trajectory all the way straight, you would end up in a completely different city, in a completely different spot. So really the message that I want to take home is that you don't have to start big. You don't If you want to get fit, or if you want to create a profitable business, you don't have to start working 14, 15, 20 hours a day trying to bust your butt to get results now. Just take it slow, because the slower that you take it, obviously you want to set a deadline, but the more time that you give yourself and the less stakes that you put yourself in, the easier it is, the easier it will be for you to adapt to that situation.
I've heard
So
that before as well. The 1 degree
yeah,
thing. I love that example.
yeah, if you really just like if you want to focus on starting a business, and or you already have a business but you want to improve it in some way, just focus on one detail today. Focus on one detail or one decision that's going to put you on that trajectory, right? Because that's ultimately how habits form. It's about trajectory, it's not about immediate results.
Yeah, it's a
So
snowball effect. It compounds over time.
exactly. So if you can just change your trajectory with just one or two decisions today, and then the same one or two decisions tomorrow, and then the same one or two decisions the next day, you're going to be well on your way to really changing your life and developing the good habits that you want to achieve. Now, I want to end this on one more way of really just understanding the way habits work. So for those people that have spent the effort and the time to actually develop good habits, you've essentially have programmed your body to want them. Now it's no longer you, the conscious person, that wants them, it's your body that begins to crave them. So I know for myself, I go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. If I miss the gym twice in a row, like 2 days in a row, my body will literally tell me, why are you not going to the gym? It takes all the stress off of me in terms of maintaining my habit, because I've put in the effort in the beginning to program my body to want those good things. So really, if you're feeling uncomfortable, just keep at it. Just continue to make the good decisions now, delay the gratification, and you'll learn later that you don't even have to think about the habits anymore. They take care of themselves.
Yes, that's so true. And you add one thing at a time. A lot of people, New Year comes
Exactly.
around, they try to do intermittent fasting, start working out every single morning, and eat clean. And it's just too much where they overwhelm themselves. I've started to implement things slowly over time, and now, like you said, they've all become habits that I don't even think about. I do fasting 16 hours, three times a week. When I first started, it used to kill me because I used to eat all the time, and I'm like hungry, and now I can do 16 hours easy. I'm thinking about, I've done 20 hours before. I'm trying to increase that number. Cold showers is another one where at first I was like, I did it for like a second and then I put it on hot and I was like, all right, that's good. And now I can actually do like a full minute or two, and then I do a little bit of a hot shower just because I love the hot water. But these things over time become routine. And now when I get in the cold shower, it's honestly like it feels relieving to me. Where at first it felt terrible, like torture I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, and now it's something that I enjoy. So just like you said, over time you will start to implement these habits that are uncomfortable at first, but they will become the new norm, and then your body will crave those things. Like just like you said, if I miss 2 days at the gym or I don't go outside and run or do something for 20 minutes at least, I feel like really bad. I'm like, I didn't finish this day out completely. I need to go for a jog, right? Or do some sit-ups.
Exactly.
And that's where you need
Yeah,
to be in order to be successful. You've got to kind of make these things part of your normal routine.
I completely agree because the main takeaway I want to give people is your conscious mind thinks in the short term, and your subconscious mind, or the way your body acts on the day to day, it's long term. So if you want to program the long term, you need to make something short term a long term thing.
Man, you had a lot of great nuggets on here. I love that. I'm gonna probably be able to put a bunch of those excerpts in the notes here. So you said the conscious brain wants short term and the
The con
subconscious. Did I mix that
yeah,
up?
the conscious mind thinks in the short term, and the subconscious mind thinks in the long term.
Wow, that is so mind-blowingly true. So everybody listen to that again, over and over again. Repeat that in your mind, because if you remind yourself that that's the case, then you'll be more aware of it, and you'll take the steps necessary to change your habits and change your life for the better.
Yeah, really, then what it becomes is aligning your conscious thinking with your subconscious thoughts, which are in the long term. So if you can really delay gratification, if you can delay results and start thinking longer term, you will be a lot better at programming yourself to do the things that you want to do.
Right, and then you'll make sure that you're doing things in the short term that will benefit you in the long term as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that is where you need to be. So, man, this has been really awesome. I really enjoyed our time here. Where can our audience go to learn more about you? Obviously, Mindfully Conscious on Instagram, and also is it mindfullyconscious.com?
Yes, sir. So I have my
Perfect.
Instagram page and my website that I mostly operate from. I'm super accessible through DMs. So if you want to talk to me on my Instagram page, I respond pretty quickly, and I love engaging with my followers. So you can always find me there.
Okay, perfect. I'll link all of that up in the show notes. And thanks again for your time. This was awesome. And I love a lot of the scientific stuff that you were able to kind of talk through today, because I read the books, I hear all the good stuff and the rah rah, the woo woo sounding things. But it's really cool that you got to show that, hey, maybe it isn't so woo woo after all, because studies in science do prove that a lot of these things are indeed true, that some of us think have, they're in Think and Grow Rich, but is it real? Like, law of attraction, visualization, does that stuff work? So this was really exciting to really hammer in the fact that those things are real and they do work.
Exactly, Chris. And it was a great pleasure to be on this show. I love the work that you're doing in real estate, and I hope we can continue to be connected in the future.
Absolutely, man. Good speaking with you. And we'll have to get you on another episode of the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast here in the future. We can talk about maybe something else like law of attraction, or what your thoughts are on that. I'd love to hear more about like the vibration and
Perfect.
quantum physics and
Yeah,
stuff.
perfect, man. I got a lot of stuff for that. So count
Perfect.
me in.
Plenty of content for another episode. Well, hey Jorge, have a great rest of your weekend, I guess, here, because we're talking on Friday, but this is going to go live on Monday. So everyone listening now, they're going to be listening on Monday. and I will let you know when this thing goes live, and then we can share with our audiences.
Sounds great.
Awesome, man. Take care.
You too.